Hello there, ladies, gents, and MBs. I am in fact a YouTuber, which means I'm legally required to talk about Attack on Titan. Which is more than fine by me. But literally, where do you even start? In a series known worldwide for insane set pieces, intense and amazingly animated action, unthinkable horror, wild-ass plot twists, and controversy like no other, it's always been the characters of this world that stand out the most to me. Each and every person in this story is a complex individual, with a captivating personality that we get to watch develop over time. For most of them, at least. And that's the best way to describe the way the characters change in the series. They develop. They don't always grow, they rarely ever change, but they're always developing more and more layers, just like our favorite onion. And none of these characters, to me, have been more breathtaking to watch develop than John Kirschtein. So, let's do just that. Run through the series just like how my ex-wife got ran through before the divorce, and see notable moments where John's character develops. This tall and majestic stallion has some big shoes to fill by the end of the series, so let's figure out how he gets there. Before we get started though, let's talk about spoilers. We're going to be sticking to the anime for this video, as it's what I'm most familiar with, which means everything up until the most recent first half of the finale is fair game. I know that the manga has long since ended, but I also think that the ending to the manga might not be exactly what we get on TV. I don't think that anything rumbling related will change, but I'm hoping for an extended epilogue scene. Who's to say though? Anyway, worry not, we won't be touching on topics not yet brought to screens. And now on to me, and my credentials for this video, of which I basically have none. I am not the biggest anime fan ever. I've never seen most of One Piece even, and as I wait for the internet to roast me alive for that one, I can still confidently say that Attack on Titan is one of my favorite stories that I've ever gotten to experience. I honestly feel insanely lucky to have gotten to watch the show from the beginning until now, as we slowly stomp our way towards the finale. In some ways, it mirrors my own path forward into adulthood. I'm not even that old, but still, 10 years is a long time. And the way that the show slowly builds its world up in settings, character, history, and mystery is second to none in my opinion. And one of the biggest ways to build a world is to show conflicting personalities to the main cast, which is how Jean is introduced in the 104th Cadet Training Arc. Upon initial watching of this arc, Jean appears to be nothing more than a stereotypical anime schoolyard rival or bully. But in retrospect, Jean shows from his first appearance his cautious and pragmatic mindset. With his more realistic dream of living in the inner walls as a member of the military police, clashing harshly with Eren's idealistic dream of venturing on beyond the walls. Their little scuffle comes to a draw, for now. Afterwards, Jean flirts with Mikasa, it gets taken down bad, son. And that's really all that Jean does before the beginning of the Battle for Trost arc. Which is totally fine, because this is the arc that truly solidifies Jean as a character worth paying attention to. Starting with him achieving his goal of being able to join the military police, his placement at number 6 in the cadet rankings makes him the best soldier that's not a Titan Shifter or Mikasa, clearly solidifying his place in the group, as well as his immense skill. But getting into the actual arc now, we all know what happens. Eren dies, and the first time you watch it, we're all like, oh my god! And then like how every person to talk about this show mentions, the show really tries to make us think Eren is actually dead, by dedicating the next few episodes to the struggles of the other primary characters, both in that moment in Trost, as well as during their whole lives, to help feign establishing a new lead character before Eren inevitably returns. And while Mikasa and Armin are two characters that the viewers have gotten to know semi-well over the limited amount of episodes so far, the interesting third inclusion is Jean. Jean isn't a person the viewers are super invested in yet. In fact, based on how fast the rest of the cadets have fallen, some may have been initially surprised that he had survived as long as he had. But the growth that he goes through in these few scenes is astronomical. Starting as just another lost soul, only to discover his purpose as a leader in a hopeless situation, that would be good on its own. But watching him struggle with the weight of his decisions, like me with the weight of my divorce, is what makes it next level. While almost all of the rookies, who aren't Titan Shifters, would surely have died in the Battle of Trost without Jean's leadership, the lives lost along the way never leave his mind. leading to the iconic scene of Jean staring down two titans through the hole in the wall, accepting what seems to be his untimely end. And then the scene after, and one of my personal favorite moments from the entire series, Jean's talk with Marco. I want to do a full video on Marco eventually, if you all are interested. Obligatory comment down below if you are. So I'm not going to go into a ton of detail here. However, this talk is what ends up sparking Jean's decision to give up his idea of safety in the MPs and to join the Scouts. He realized his purpose and what his abilities as a soldier, as well as a leader, can do for his comrades and is willing to put his life on the line for them. And already, in under half a season, we have a side character with more development than main characters of other shows. Going from someone who wanted a safe life, the easy road, but during literal hell, discovers his purpose in life and chooses to stand and dedicate his heart as the majority of the crowd runs away in fear. But it's the fact that he's still Jean, and not a mini Eren, that astounds me. As while both are on the same team now with joining the Scouts, at this point, their goals are still wildly different. While Eren gets to bask in main character syndrome and still aspires to be humanity's hero, with no fear whatsoever, and literally in the context of the universe at this point, magical powers. Jean is not like this at all. He's still cautious, he's still scared, he's still Jean. But he realizes what his life can mean to humanity as a whole, and that's enough for him. Enough to be willing to give his heart and soul to the cause. Which leads us to the end of the season. While yes, obviously Jean was present for the whole 57th Exterior scouting mission, and he did have that conversation about Erwin's morality. That was more to show how Armin was thinking significantly more logistically than fellow new recruit Jean, and his more naive perspective of morality. We are focusing on scenes that develop Jean, and if we did a whole series retrospective of every time that he scratches his ass, we're gonna be here all day. But I do love how Jean is treated in the Battle of Stoas, which is really weird because Jean does not develop during it whatsoever, but it represents his growth. Literally having Jean dress as Eren during the Scouts' ruse, only to have him judge the MPs not reacting to the Titan attack literally in their city, wondering why he would ever want to be one of them as soon as he breaks cover. Afterwards, he again shows his perseverance when he rushes in to fight Annie, even while knowing Eren couldn't or wouldn't transform. But besides that, that's it for Jean in Season 1. Except for one more thing. The last scene. In the end of Season 1, we focus on 4 characters, and we see Eren, Mikasa, Armin, and Jean. Take note, we don't see Connie, we don't see Reiner, we don't see Sasha, Historia, Levi, or anyone else. Besides the final scene with Erwin, the end of the episode focuses on these 4, really showing Jean's growth into a main member of the cast. This is probably me reading way too much into this, but Jean's placement in the cast has always astounded me, because he can really go from secondary character to main character and back again as the story needs it. Because just as it seems he's about to be a lead character, Jean's role in Season 2 is greatly diminished. Up until the confrontation of Reiner and Bertolt during the operation to recover Eren at the end of the season, Jean barely appears and is largely relegated to the sidelines. Which is totally fine. This is Clash of the Titans after all. Most not Titan related people don't really get much to do. It is a little jarring though, but I'm gonna say that it's worth it for the moments that he does get. That emotional confrontation between the members of the 104th really does hit differently with the added context of knowing about the warriors' past and Marley's influence on them. On top of that, we also get the quick scene of him saving Mikasa, clearly showing his progress as a soldier. And also, yes, it did seem to me like Jean might die the first time that I watched the scene where he flies off his horse, after Reiner starts tossing Titans around it as a final desperation attack. And that would have been a shame, honestly. It would have been a really anticlimactic end to a character with a ton of potential. Which goes really well with what's coming up next, because even though Season 3 Part 1 is pretty widely regarded as the slowest and somewhat least interesting arc, I actually really enjoy it, because this is the arc where Jean really becomes who he's gonna be at the end of the series. Jean's first big defining action of this arc is of course his inaction. When Levi gives the order that humans are the enemy too, we clearly see the strain that puts on Jean, when his usually calm composure ends up getting cracked wide open. He really tries to follow his orders, but he can't get his head and his heart to connect and be okay with killing another person. he still wants to be the good guy. He still wants to try to take the enemy alive. So, when he ends up going from the guy pointing the gun to having it pointed back at his head, if Armin hadn't shot that woman, Jean would have certainly died here. Which is, of course, shown to us as another, albeit more direct fake-out death for Jean. As we cut from the sound of the gunshot, as Armin is screaming out his name, to another scene for a good while before the reveal. God, this show loves doing fake-out deaths for Jean. But despite how wild this sequence is, it's the scene after, where the scouts are just sitting and talking about what happened, that really gets to me. Armin nonchalantly knowing that he's losing his humanity, Jean feeling guilty for even putting Armin in that situation, all leading to Levi's reveal that his morality has essentially been thrown out, and that he doesn't know what the right decision is, that they're all just trying to survive. It's a really important scene for developing all the scouts. They became soldiers to protect people, and now they're killing them, and you can see it affect every character a little bit differently. But our boy Jean is who we're interested in. And these moments, both staring down at his own death, and the conversation after, will be major factors of who he becomes. And regardless of the frankly insane situations he always seems to find himself in, his resolve never breaks. Which is then immediately proven to us in his short scene of Hitch and that guy. Molo, yeah, Molo. This show has too many characters, I swear to God. But yes, that little show Jean puts on in the woods shows Jean's determination towards keeping his friends safe, but also his reaction towards Levi's earlier comment of having lost his morality, by striving to keep his own intact by proving to his captain that the prisoners could be trusted. That, and how even us as the audience think that Jean is a hair away from blowing Molo's brains out with that stick. It's just a really fun scene of Jean getting to be the good guy, which is great for him, but unfortunately will not last long. Jean's last scene of development in this arc is right at the end again, when the scouts are racing to rescue Aaron. Jean needs to do what he wasn't capable of doing in his first developmental scene of this arc, and afterwards, he's changed forever. Jean, like Levi and Armin and Erwin and the leaders before them, realize that their previous views of morality in a war of this nature are just impossible to maintain. But luckily for Jean, and for the runtime of this video, that's basically the whole royal government arc. We see this leader learn how to adapt to a changing landscape of war. He loses his Season 1 naiveness of morality, and accepting that he's going to have to do things that he may have once thought of as inhuman. Which is great foreshadowing for Season 4, but we need to get there first. So, we have this group of young soldiers who have been through hell and back a few times now. How do we show their growth? Well, that's the initial role of Flock. He quickly establishes them all as being 104th cadets, and as we commented on exposits in the previous episode, it's only been a few months since their graduation. No major time skips in the series yet, folks. So, when Flock and his group are intimidated simply by the way that our main gang carry themselves, all the way to Jean's iconic line of,
"What exactly happened? Wanna know?" "No. I'll ask some other time."
This scene is just superb, to show not only Jean's growth since Season 1, but that of the whole cast. Which is only amplified by, to this point, Aaron and Jean's final fight. And unlike the previous brawls, this one actually works to help cut the tension, with it hilariously going on far longer than either man thought it would, until Levi comes and just wrecks both of them. I love how Jean is willing to fight hand to hand with someone who can literally trample millions of people. That joke sounded funnier when I started it. The Return of Shiganshina arc is Jean's battle of trust again, but on crack, and I love it. His initial role is minor, having a small, emotional scene of Connie and Sasha when they initially almost kill Reiner, but it's after Bertolt transforms and they're the last scout standing that Jean's pragmatic side comes out once again. Armin's fear and confusion as to what to do freezes him in place, so even though Jean knows they won't be successful without a plan, he leads his team again in a final, at this point, desperate strike against the Colossal Titan. And while this obviously fails, Jean's willingness to lead his friends into their probable deaths, for the sliver of a chance of it being for the good of all mankind, is such an extension of the lessons that he learned in Trust. The growth that he's gone through in these short months is insane, because even though Jean's attack failed, his leadership didn't. His actions helped Armin develop a plan to defeat Rhino and Bertolt. And when that plan needed the already small team to split up, Jean was the obvious and only choice to lead the attack on the Armor Titan. And his leadership, along with the surprise assist from Hanji of course, during that attack is a huge factor in why the squad was successful at taking down Reiner. But he's still Jean. He still wants to keep his morality, even after taking people's lives. So, when he argues Hanji on keeping Reiner alive, maybe it was feelings for his former comrade. Maybe it was purely tactical to make sure someone got his powers. Maybe it was both. To be honest, we don't know, and probably neither did Jean. Which is probably how Jean felt watching Bertolt get turned into a bag of cream-filled flaming hot Cheetos. And that's most of what Jean has had happen to him by the end of Season 3. With a few minor exceptions that I think are worth bringing up. His little don't be a shit talk with Flock during the memorial, the shared experience of exploring beyond the walls, and of course the infamous not much development in these scenes, but just some moments I thought worth mentioning. Flock's a dick. And okay, we're on the final season now, and by this point, the development has pretty much stopped for these characters. Also, I'm getting better at speaking, I don't know if you guys have been able to notice. But, these characters are who they are now. The time skip is pretty representative of that, and if you have any objections, watch the train scene again, where they're talking about who will be the next founding Titan, and tell me everyone is not exactly in character. Jean's want to be the founder, due to him being the best leader and having better judgment than Eren, not being denied by his friends, but rather used as a reason why he shouldn't be the founder, has always been a highlight to me. Like, yeah, they all know Jean can talk a big game, but he has never had a problem backing it up. But the point of this is that the development is essentially done. So let's talk more about the decisions that Jean makes, and try to break down why he makes them, knowing what we know about him. That beautiful bastard. And I think the first major thing to talk about is the decision Jean makes to spare Falco and Gabby on the airship. His line to Flock of,
"Do you really think tossing kids out of an airship is gonna help us stop all this killing?"
really gets me every time that I hear it. Keep in mind, everything that not only Jean had to do, but that everyone on that airship had to do, and everything that we the audience just watched during the raid of Liberio. Gabby killed a scout, shot Sasha, and if Falco didn't intervene, would have certainly died alongside Jean when they trade shots immediately after Sasha gets shot. And while he knows that what he just did was awful, he clearly cares for minimizing civilian casualties when he accosts Flock for not doing that earlier. So yes, he took a shot at Gabby out of anger and being in direct danger, but after given 5 seconds to calm down from the anger of his friend being wounded, as well as Gabby's disarmament by this point, and posing no further risk, he decides he can't be okay with killing these kids. That's not okay. That's not Jean. The next point of Jean being Jean is a more subtle moment, but I love when he and Connie are at Sasha's grave of Niccolo. I'm pretty sure I messed up that name, but anyway, he's a Malian, the same as Gabby, but rather than joining the crowd of being ignorantly hateful of their enemy, they all just share in Sasha's memory. It's beautiful, honestly. And of course, because this is Attack on Titan, it pays into the story later, when Niccolo saves Jean and Connie from drinking Zeke's spinal wine. God, this story is amazing. It's so nuanced, there's so many things going on at once, and that really comes to a climax when we need to talk about the war for parity and the start of the rumbling. I don't think that we could ever justify such an awful act, but what else could the scouts have done in that moment other than protect Eren? Up until Eren connected every subject of Ymir in the paths, they still thought the plan was just to do a test rumbling, as a way to keep foreign powers away from Paradis. So really Jean and the others were still just trying to survive and protect the people they care about. The same could be said of every character in this story, and that's partially why I love it so much. Another reason being how cyclical it is. Everything comes back around in one way or another. So, remember how much I loved Jean's crisis of faith back in Season 1, and how I loved watching him come to his conclusion to join the Scouts in the first place? and how that's all based on his interaction with Marco? Well, let's run through that again in Season 4. So immediately after the rumbling battle was over, and we get that amazing scene of the scouts synchronized striking the Titans, we have the offer from Flock to Jean to join the Jaegerists as a high-ranking official. And this is clearly Flock trying to appeal to the Jean that he knew back in the 104th Cadet Corps. But unfortunately, that Jean doesn't exist anymore. Despite that though, he still goes through a crisis of conscience, because he wants to think that his previous actions were worth it, as well as the whole wanting to survive thing that some people seem to have. Could never be me. But Horseface does consider Demon Spawn's offer, at least until he has a secret meeting with Hanji and Mikasa. During this meeting, Jean is still convinced that, while flawed, the Jaegerists are still the best solution for Paradis' problems. He's cautious about both his future and that of the entire island, to the point where he's almost willing to just go along with it. Until Hanji asks if he thinks his fallen comrades would agree with him, letting the whole world die for the sake of their island. And in that ethereal realm of the fallen comrades, surrounded by their watchful eyes, Jean again sees Marco, reaffirming what he believes in, with a line that always shakes me whenever I hear it.
ハンジさん、俺はまだ調査兵団です。
And this scene of Marco isn't only for that meeting, because later on in the season, when the scouts and the warriors are sitting around the fire, Jean and the rest of the group finally learn the truth behind Marco's death, and what I love is Jean's reaction to hearing the news. Initially, he's able to keep it together, but as soon as Rhino tries to apologize, he completely loses it and fully embraces Season 1 Eren energy by attempting to beat Rhino to death. But he stops after he accidentally injures Gabby, showing him that trying to seek revenge for this would only end up hurting everyone else. He eventually manages to come to his senses and decides that he's going to need to be able to work with the warriors if they have any chance of saving the world. Which is of course untrue, as Jean does end up forgiving Rhino in the final part of what is currently the final episode of Attack on Titan translated into anime. As after the assault to get the flying boat and wiping out the Jaegers guarding it, and then seeing Flock and then Hanji's death immediately after, Jean is more able to empathize with how Rhino must have felt watching people he once considered friends die. And of course that comes to a head immediately. Eren directly tells the crew that the only way to stop him is to defeat him. And as we watch Jean and the rest of our heroes literally jump into action, that's where we're gonna leave things off, just before the final battle. Like I said before, no manga spoilers, but I think it's pretty safe to say, from everything that we've talked about thus far, that Jean will be himself and get some great moments of leading his team one last time, in what is sure to be one of the best battles ever committed to our screens. Especially with the recent loss of Hanji, Levi's still severe injuries, along with Armin's obvious roles with Colossal Titan, expect to see Jean in a pretty decent leadership role. I sincerely can't wait. Also, based on the amount of fake-out deaths in the series, I sincerely think Jean's going to die. And I really need to get this video out before the second part, just in case I'm right, even though I hope that I'm not. But that's the video. I've been working on this for way too long. I started this in March, and that seems like a lifetime ago. I had all my teeth, I didn't have a girlfriend, a lot of things were different in my life. But I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure to like the video, comment down below who you want me to cover next, and subscribe to see more. I love you all, and I love Jean Kirschtein, the reluctant hero. I'll see y'all next time.